Picture this. A man from 50,000 years ago stands in front of you. His muscles weren't built in gyms but forged through survival, dragging animals across fields, climbing cliffs, and fighting predators with nothing but his bare hands. No modern diet, no fitness coach, just raw, untamed power. Now think about this, and if that caveman faced the strongest man alive today in an arm wrestling match, who do you think would win? Most of us imagine cavemen as slow and clumsy, but the truth is far more surprising. Their real strength wasn't only in muscle, it was in endurance, stamina, and a grip strong enough to crush bones. And before we dive deeper, I'm curious, where in the world are you watching this from right now? Drop your city in the comments. It would honestly make me really happy to know. 50,000 years ago, life was brutally simple. There were no supermarkets to buy food, no cozy homes to return to, and no doctors waiting to help if you got injured. Back then, survival wasn't guaranteed. Every single day was a test, and only the strong had a real chance of making it. This was the reality for cavemen. Their world was wild, unpredictable, and often dangerous. To survive, they needed more than just intelligence. They needed physical power. Carrying heavy firewood for miles, hauling water from rivers, climbing rocky cliffs with bare hands, or dragging the carcass of a hunted animal back to camp. These weren't workouts. They were daily routines, and each task demanded strength, endurance, and resilience that few of us today can even imagine. Now think about your own daily life. You probably wake up, check your phone, maybe sit at a desk, drive to work, or relax at home. Sure, you might hit the gym a few times a week, but let's be honest. Modern life doesn't ask much from our bodies. Compare that with a caveman's life, where nearly every moment demanded physical effort. The difference is staggering. It's no surprise then that cavemen grew stronger not by choice but by necessity. They didn't train to look good in the mirror. They didn't count calories or follow a fitness routine. Their strength was shaped by nature itself. Their gym was the forest. Their weights were stones, spears, and animal carcasses. Their cardio? Running across miles of rough terrain in pursuit of food, or while escaping predators. But here's where things get truly interesting. Cavemen weren't just strong in a physical sense. They had a type of functional strength that modern athletes often struggle to achieve. A caveman's body was built for survival. Stamina to walk for hours. Explosive power to throw a spear, and grip strength tough enough to climb or crush. Imagine shaking hands with someone who could split animal bones for marrow without modern tools. That's the level of natural strength we're talking about. Most of us grew up seeing cavemen as clumsy brutes in cartoons or movies, always holding big wooden clubs and looking half asleep. But those depictions are misleading. In truth, cavemen were some of the toughest survivors our species has ever seen. Their strength wasn't flashy, but it was raw, practical, and deeply connected to the harsh world they lived in. And that brings us to the big question: how would cavemen compare to us today? If you placed one of them in front of a modern human, someone who trains hard, maybe even a professional athlete, would we stand a chance? Or would we discover that all our gyms and training methods can't measure up to the strength nature once demanded from every single human? That's exactly what we're going to explore in this video. Together, we'll dive into the daily lives of cavemen, uncover the secrets behind their natural strength, and compare their endurance, stamina, and resilience with what we know about ourselves today. We'll also break down what science has revealed about their bones, muscles, and way of life. But before we go further, let me ask you something. Where are you watching this from right now? I'd love to know. Drop your city or country in the comments. It honestly makes me happy to see how a story about our distant ancestors can reach people all over the world. So, let's begin this journey into the past and find out just how strong cavemen actually were. Imagine waking up thousands of years ago, not in a soft bed but on the hard ground of a cave. The first sound you hear isn't an alarm clock. It's the crackling of a fire fading out or the howl of a predator echoing in the distance. This was the beginning of a normal day for a caveman, and every day started with the same urgent question: how do we survive today? For cavemen, life had no pause button. Food didn't wait on shelves and water didn't flow from taps. The first task of the day was often searching for water, sometimes walking for hours to find a clean source. Once water was secured, the real challenge began: the hunt. Hunting wasn't a hobby. It was a life or death mission. Imagine chasing an animal across open plains, armed with nothing more than a sharpened stick or a stone-tipped spear. Hunting meant running, tracking footprints, and moving quietly for hours. When the chance finally came, it took explosive power to throw a spear with enough force to bring an animal down. And once the kill was made, the hard work wasn't over. Dragging the heavy carcass back to camp demanded brute strength. Gathering was just as important. Cavemen searched forests for berries, nuts, and roots. They carried bundles of firewood over long distances. Each task required stamina, grip strength, and balance. There were no shortcuts, no machines to help. If something had to be lifted, carried, or moved, human strength was the only option. And let's not forget the dangers. Predators like lions, wolves, or even rival tribes were constant threats. That meant being ready to fight or flee at any moment. Climbing trees, sprinting across rocky ground, or defending the group with stone weapons. All of it kept their bodies in constant motion. Even building shelter was no small task. Imagine stacking heavy rocks, carrying branches, or digging into the ground with primitive tools. Cavemen didn't need workout routines. Their exercise was survival itself, shaping their bodies naturally into lean, powerful machines. Now compare this with our modern lives. Most of us spend hours sitting in front of screens, maybe moving from the sofa to the kitchen and back. We drive cars, use machines for heavy lifting, and rarely face any real physical challenge. The average caveman burned more calories before noon than many of us do in an entire day. Their lifestyle didn't just demand strength, it created it. But here's the most fascinating part. Cavemen didn't train to look muscular. They weren't sculpting their bodies for aesthetics. Yet they developed functional strength that modern athletes often admire. Their legs could carry them for miles, their backs could haul massive loads, and their hands were strong enough to climb rocks or split wood daily. Think of it this way. For a caveman, the world was both a gym and a battlefield. Every action had purpose, and every movement built the body they needed to survive. Whether it was chasing prey, escaping danger, or simply making shelter, strength was not optional. It was the price of survival. And while their days were brutally hard, this lifestyle forged humans who were incredibly tough, resilient, and capable of feats of endurance that would leave most of us today exhausted within minutes. So, when we talk about caveman strength, we're not just talking about muscles. We're talking about a way of life that constantly pushed the human body to its limits. A lifestyle that demanded strength not once a day, but every waking moment. In the next chapter, we'll explore what exactly made cavemen so physically powerful. Was it their diet, their natural training, or something hidden deep within their bones and muscles? Stay with me, because the science behind their strength is even more surprising. Now that we've seen what a typical day looked like for a caveman, the next question is, what exactly made them so strong? Why were their bodies naturally tougher than ours? The answer lies in a mix of lifestyle, biology, and constant physical challenges. First, let's talk about bones. Scientists have studied the skeletons of early humans and discovered something fascinating. Cavemen had bones that were thicker and denser than ours. Imagine bones not like fragile sticks, but more like solid steel rods. This bone density meant their bodies could handle heavier loads, absorb more impact, and withstand the daily stress of hunting and survival. In short, their very skeletons were built for strength. Then there's muscle endurance. Unlike modern gym goers who focus on lifting heavy weights for short bursts, cavemen needed muscles that could work all day long. Hunting required hours of walking, running, and carrying. Building shelters or gathering firewood wasn't a 20-minute workout. It was a never-ending routine. Their muscles were conditioned for stamina, not just raw power. That's why they likely had lean, wiry physiques. Not bulky like modern bodybuilders, but efficient, powerful, and built to last. Another factor was diet. Cavemen ate what nature gave them. Lean meats, fish, fruits, nuts, and roots. Their food wasn't processed, sugary, or full of additives. While they didn't always eat regularly, the nutrition they got was dense in energy and protein. Compare that with our modern diets filled with fast food and empty calories, and it's clear why their bodies were more naturally adapted to strength and endurance. Let's not forget their environment. Cavemen lived outdoors, exposed to the elements. Cold winds, blazing sun, rain, or snow. Their bodies adapted to survive in all conditions. This constant exposure built resilience and toughness. Their skin, lungs, and muscles were hardened in ways modern humans rarely experience. Imagine the difference between someone who sits in an office all day and someone who spends their entire life climbing, running, and enduring extreme weather. That's the gap between us and them. Now here's something really interesting. Grip strength. Studies suggest that cavemen had incredibly powerful hands. Think about all the tasks they did daily. Carving tools from stone, gripping spears tightly, climbing trees, or carrying heavy animal hides. Over time, their hands became like iron clamps. Some scientists even believe their grip strength could have been double that of an average modern human. Imagine a handshake that feels like your hand is caught in a vice. That's caveman-level grip. But strength isn't just about muscles and bones. It's also about energy systems. Cavemen's bodies were tuned for endurance. They could chase prey for miles in what's known as persistence hunting. Instead of relying on speed alone, they relied on sheer stamina. They could literally exhaust animals by running them down over long distances, something modern humans almost never attempt. That level of cardiovascular fitness is rare today, even among trained athletes. Now compare this with us today. Most of us sit for hours, use machines for lifting, and eat food that barely nourishes us. Even if we train at the gym, our workouts are artificial and limited. Cavemen didn't train, they lived. And that life created bodies naturally engineered for strength and survival. In the next chapter, we'll look at how this strength played out in the most important part of their lives, hunting and survival. Because being strong wasn't about looking impressive, it was about putting food on the fire and staying alive another day. Strength meant nothing to cavemen unless it helped them survive. Every muscle, every bone, every ounce of stamina had one purpose: to hunt, gather, and stay alive. Unlike us, they didn't work out to look good. They worked out because life demanded it. Let's start with hunting. Cavemen didn't have rifles, arrows, or modern weapons. They had sharp sticks, stone axes, and their bare hands. To bring down an animal, they needed courage and raw strength. Imagine chasing a wild boar that weighs as much as 3 grown men. You had to outrun it, trap it, or corner it with your tribe. One wrong move and you could be the one lying on the ground. This is where their endurance strength came into play. Cavemen used a technique called persistence hunting. Instead of relying on speed alone, they would track animals for hours, sometimes even days, until the prey was too exhausted to run anymore. That meant walking under the hot sun, climbing rough terrains, and running for miles without stopping. Few modern humans could even attempt this today, but for cavemen it was survival. Once the prey was caught, the real test of strength began. Carrying heavy loads was part of daily life. Imagine dragging a deer or wild buffalo back to camp without a cart, without wheels, without any modern tools. Cavemen had to rely on sheer muscle power. Their shoulders, backs, and legs were constantly under pressure, building natural strength far beyond ours. And it wasn't just hunting. Gathering and building also required massive effort. Cutting wood for fires, carrying stones for shelters, climbing trees for fruits. All of these daily tasks shaped their bodies. Their lifestyle was like an endless full-body workout. No breaks, no shortcuts. Now think about their weapons. Spears and stone axes weren't light. They had to be carried, sharpened, and used with precision. Throwing a spear with enough force to pierce an animal's skin wasn't easy. It needed explosive power in the arms, chest, and core. Repeating this day after day made their upper bodies incredibly strong. Another area where strength played a role was defense. Cavemen didn't only fight animals. They sometimes fought other tribes. Protecting food, territory, and family meant being ready to battle at any moment. Fist fights, stone throwing, wrestling with rivals. All of this demanded strength, agility, and courage. But here's something fascinating. Strength was not just about power. It was also about teamwork. Cavemen hunted in groups. They had to coordinate, surround prey, and attack together. Each person's strength added up to a much bigger force. That's why survival wasn't about being the strongest individual, but about being strong enough to help the tribe. Let's not forget the mental toughness that came with this. Hunting wasn't only physical. It required patience, focus, and bravery. Imagine sitting silently in the dark, waiting for hours, heart pounding, knowing a predator could attack you instead. That mental strength made their physical power even more impressive. So when we talk about caveman strength, it wasn't just raw muscle. It was survival strength, the kind that came from facing danger daily. Their lives were like one endless battlefield, and their bodies were the armor that kept them alive. Now comes the question everyone secretly wants the answer to. If a caveman and a modern human stood side by side, who would actually be stronger? Imagine this face-off for a moment. On one side, you have a person from thousands of years ago, with no modern training, no gym, no supplements, just a life of survival. On the other side, you have us young with science, diets, machines, and sports knowledge. Who wins? Cavemen had an advantage that came naturally. Their entire lifestyle was one long workout. Every day they lifted heavy loads, ran across vast landscapes, climbed rocks and trees, carried water, wood, and meat, and fought off predators. Their bones were denser, their muscles wiry and efficient, and their hands were like iron from constantly gripping tools and weapons. They didn't train for aesthetics or competitions. They trained by living. If you dropped a caveman in a modern gym, he wouldn't know what a bench press was, but he could probably lift and carry weights with shocking ease. Modern humans, however, have developed specialized strength. Olympic lifters, sprinters, and professional athletes can perform incredible feats thanks to focused training and nutrition. But there's a difference between specialized power and survival power. A lifter today might be able to bench press more than a caveman ever could. But could he chase an animal for hours, throw a spear with deadly accuracy, or walk for days carrying supplies? Most likely not. Cavemen weren't stronger in one specific exercise. They were stronger across all aspects of daily life. Endurance is another area where cavemen excelled. They practiced persistence hunting, tracking prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Imagine jogging and sprinting on and off for an entire day, under the hot sun, carrying only primitive tools, and not giving up until the animal gave out. That was normal for them. Today, even trained marathon runners would find that level of stamina difficult. Cavemen had lungs and hearts conditioned for survival, not for medals or trophies. The difference is also clear in toughness. Cavemen lived without the comforts we consider basic. No heating, no cooling, no soft beds, no safety nets. Their bodies hardened to weather pain and hunger. They could sleep on hard ground, walk barefoot, and keep moving through injuries that would put most of us in the hospital. A modern human might beat a caveman in a short race or in lifting a barbell with perfect form. But the caveman would simply outlast us in almost everything else. Of course, we have one huge advantage: our brains and technology. While cavemen relied purely on their muscles and instincts, we've built machines that replace strength, tools that make hunting unnecessary, and medicine that protects us. We've traded natural strength for intelligence and innovation. In many ways, this makes us stronger in the bigger picture. But if you strip everything away, the machines, the comforts, the tools, a caveman would feel like a powerhouse compared to us. So, who was stronger? In raw natural strength and endurance, cavemen win without question. They lived in a world that forced them to be tough. Modern humans are faster in short bursts, more specialized thanks to sports science, and smarter with technology. But in a direct comparison of body versus body, cavemen carried the edge. If you were to shake hands with one, you would immediately feel the crushing grip, the calloused skin, and the raw energy of someone whose entire life was built around survival. They weren't superheroes. They were just humans like us, but their environment shaped them into something we can hardly imagine today. If we were to face them without our modern comforts, most of us wouldn't last very long. Cavemen weren't just stronger in body. They were stronger in spirit too, hardened by a life that demanded everything from them. And yet this doesn't mean every story about their strength is true. In the next chapter, we'll uncover some of the biggest myths and misconceptions people believe about cavemen, and separate the facts from the exaggerations. When people think about cavemen, they often imagine huge, bulky men with massive muscles, almost like prehistoric bodybuilders swinging clubs and crushing animals with their bare hands. But the truth is, much of what we think we know about their strength is shaped by myths, movies, and exaggerations rather than real history. Cavemen were strong, no doubt, but not in the way pop culture makes us believe. One of the biggest misconceptions is that cavemen were all giants. In reality, they weren't towering superheroes. Most early humans were shorter than us, with average heights closer to 5 feet tall, sometimes even less depending on the region. Their frames were smaller, but their bodies were dense, compact, and efficient. They didn't need to look huge to be powerful. Their strength came from bone density, constant movement, and endurance, not just size. If you looked at a caveman standing next to a modern athlete, you might even underestimate him, until you saw what he could do. Another myth is that cavemen were always brutally violent, smashing everything in sight. While they did fight animals and rival tribes when necessary, their lives were more about cooperation than destruction. Hunting often required teamwork, patience, and strategy. Their strength was rarely used for random fights. It was used for survival. The idea of cavemen constantly battling each other with clubs is more Hollywood than reality. There's also the belief that cavemen had superhuman strength, as if they could throw boulders across valleys or wrestle bears for fun. This is pure exaggeration. Cavemen were human, just like us, with limits to what they could do. What made them impressive wasn't supernatural power, but the fact that they survived with the strength they had in a brutal, unforgiving world. Their strength was practical, not magical. They weren't unstoppable beasts. They still got injured, still felt pain, and still struggled. Another common misunderstanding is about their looks. People often imagine cavemen with perfectly sculpted muscles, like a prehistoric action hero. But their physiques were not built for show. They were lean, wiry, and sometimes even thin because food wasn't always available. Strength for them wasn't about bulging biceps or six-packs. It was about being able to hunt, carry, climb, and endure. If anything, their bodies would look more like today's long-distance athletes or farmers than gym bodybuilders. And here's another myth, that modern humans are physically superior just because we have gyms and advanced training. The truth is, even though our athletes may lift heavier or run faster in short races, we've lost the natural toughness cavemen had. They didn't have shoes with cushioning, protein shakes, or coaches. Their training was life itself, and it made them resilient in ways we can barely imagine. They weren't superhuman, but compared to the average person today, their strength and endurance would feel almost unreal. Lastly, there's the romanticized idea that cavemen lived simple, easy lives free from stress, spending their days hunting and relaxing. In reality, their lives were full of struggle. Every day was a fight for survival. They didn't grow strong because life was easy. They grew strong because life was hard. Their strength was forged in hunger, danger, and the constant challenge of the wild. So when we think about cavemen's strength, We need to separate fact from fiction. They weren't giants, they weren't superheroes, and they didn't live carefree lives of power. They were ordinary humans shaped by extraordinary circumstances. They didn't have the luxury of being weak, and that necessity made them stronger in body and mind. Science has given us a fascinating window into just how strong cavemen really were. Through the study of fossils, bones, and preserved remains, researchers have been able to uncover secrets about their bodies that tell a story far more detailed than legends or myths ever could. And the truth is, the science confirms what we've already suspected. Cavemen were built tougher than us in almost every way. The first piece of evidence comes from their bones. When scientists examine the skeletons of early humans, they find that their bones were far denser and thicker than modern human bones. To put it simply, our bones today are like hollow tubes compared to theirs, which were more like solid rods. That density gave them the ability to withstand impacts and stresses that would easily injure us. Imagine jumping from a height, landing hard on your legs, and walking away without even a bruise. For cavemen, their bone strength made those kinds of shocks survivable. But it wasn't just the bones. Studies of muscle attachment points on fossilized skeletons showed that cavemen had larger areas where muscles connected to bone, meaning their muscles were naturally stronger and capable of producing more force. Even without gyms or training programs, their muscles were constantly engaged, pulling and straining in ways that shaped their bodies for maximum efficiency. Science suggests that their grip strength alone might have been double or even triple that of an average modern human. Think about what that means. A handshake so powerful it would feel like being caught in a vice. Another fascinating detail revealed by science is their stamina. Through the analysis of ancient footprints and the study of persistence hunting, researchers believe cavemen were capable of running animals to exhaustion over long distances. This required an incredible cardiovascular system, lungs that could keep going for hours, and hearts conditioned for endurance. While we might be able to sprint faster in short bursts today, cavemen had the kind of stamina that could keep them moving all day long, a feature that no gym workout can truly replicate. Diet also played a crucial role, and science helps us understand this better too. Cavemen lived on lean meats, fish, fruits, nuts, and wild plants. They didn't consume processed sugar, fried foods, or chemical additives. Their nutrition came directly from nature, giving their bodies the fuel they needed to perform at peak levels. Studies of ancient teeth and isotopes in bones confirm that their diets were high in protein and essential nutrients, which naturally supported stronger muscles and bones. Another area science explores is the way cavemen adapted to their environment. Living outdoors meant their bodies developed resilience against weather extremes. Their skin, lungs, and immune systems toughened up over generations. Modern humans often get weak or sick when exposed to harsh climates, but for cavemen, it was just part of daily life. Scientists studying the wear and tear on their skeletons even found signs that they endured injuries that would cripple most of us today. Yet they kept moving, kept hunting, and kept surviving. What's equally impressive is how science shows the balance in their bodies. Cavemen weren't overly bulky like modern bodybuilders, but they weren't frail either. They were perfectly built for efficiency, lean, muscular, and tough. Their bodies were like machines designed to last, with every part serving a purpose. So when we put all of this evidence together, the picture is clear. Cavemen were not mythical giants, but ordinary humans whose bodies were tuned to survive the harshest conditions. Science proves they had denser bones, stronger muscles, superior grip, and greater endurance than most of us today. They were the product of a world that demanded strength at every turn. Looking back at cavemen, it's easy to think of them as relics of the past. People who lived in a world so different from ours that nothing they did could possibly matter today. But the truth is, their way of life still carries lessons for us, especially when it comes to strength, endurance, and survival. We may not need to chase animals through the forest anymore, but the habits that made cavemen strong are the very ones that could make our lives healthier and more resilient even now. One of the biggest lessons is movement. Cavemen didn't sit for hours in front of screens, in offices, or in cars. Their lives were built around constant physical activity. They walked long distances, lifted heavy things, climbed, crouched, and carried. Every part of their daily routine was a natural workout. Today, we often struggle with sitting too much, which weakens our muscles and bones. If there's one thing we can learn from them, it's the value of moving more. Not just in the gym, but in daily life. Walking instead of driving short distances, carrying our own groceries, taking the stairs, stretching and bending naturally. These small things mirror the lifestyle that kept cavemen strong. Another lesson is diet. Cavemen ate real food, lean meats, fish, fruits, nuts, and vegetables. They didn't have processed snacks, sugary drinks, or artificial additives. Their bodies were fueled by nutrients straight from nature, which supported their strength and endurance. For us, this doesn't mean going back to hunting and foraging, but it does mean choosing more whole foods and less junk. The closer we eat to what nature provides, the more our bodies benefit. Cavemen survived without fast food, and so can we. Cavemen also teach us about resilience. They lived outdoors in harsh conditions, adapting to heat, cold, hunger, and danger. Today, we are quick to avoid discomfort. We want air conditioning when it's hot, heating when it's cold, and instant food when we're hungry. While comfort is a gift, it can also make us weaker. Sometimes stepping out of our comfort zone, whether it's exercising harder, spending time in nature, or challenging ourselves mentally, can build the toughness we've lost. Cavemen remind us that strength is not just about muscles, but also about the ability to endure. Another important lesson is teamwork. Cavemen didn't survive alone. They lived in tribes. Hunting, building, protecting, all of these tasks were done together. Their strength came not only from individual muscles, but from collective effort. In our world, where individualism is often celebrated, it's worth remembering that real strength often comes from community, from supporting each other, and from working as a group toward survival and success. Finally, cavemen show us the balance between body and mind. They weren't just strong physically, they were sharp mentally. Surviving in the wild required awareness, problem-solving, patience, and courage. Their strength was as much about focus as it was about muscle. For us, this is a reminder that physical fitness alone isn't enough. Mental toughness, discipline, and clarity matter just as much. In many ways, modern life has made us smarter and more comfortable, but it has also taken away the natural challenges that once made humans strong. The good news is that we can bring back some of those elements in simple ways. Move more, eat real food, spend time outdoors, build resilience, value community, and train both body and mind. These are lessons straight from the caveman world that still apply today. So while we don't need to throw spears or run after wild animals anymore, we can still capture the essence of what made cavemen powerful. Their strength wasn't about appearance or competition. It was about survival, health, and endurance. If we borrow even a little bit from their lifestyle, we might find ourselves becoming stronger, healthier, and tougher in ways we never expected. When we look back at the story of cavemen, it's easy to see them as primitive or even simple. They didn't have technology, they didn't have modern science, and they didn't have the comforts we take for granted today. But when we study their strength, their endurance, and their way of life, we realize they were far from weak or basic. They were survivors. Their bodies were tuned by nature itself, shaped by the daily demands of a world that tested them at every turn. Cavemen didn't have the choice to be weak. Every sunrise brought new challenges: hunger, danger, weather, and the constant need to protect their tribes. Strength for them wasn't about building muscles to look good in a mirror. It was about staying alive. They carried, climbed, hunted, and fought because they had to. That lifestyle created a natural toughness that most of us have lost. Yet as much as they were stronger in body, we are stronger in other ways. We've built tools, medicine, and machines that remove the need for brute force. We no longer have to chase our food or fight predators. Our strength now lies in our minds, our creativity, and our ability to shape the world around us. In a sense, we've traded physical power for intelligence and innovation. That doesn't make us better or worse. It simply makes us different. but the lessons are still there. Cavemen remind us that strength comes from challenge. Comfort can make us soft, but struggle makes us resilient. They remind us of the importance of movement, real food, teamwork, and mental toughness. Their lives may be thousands of years behind us, but the principles that kept them alive still apply to us today. So if we were to ask the question one last time, were cavemen stronger than us? The answer is yes in almost every physical sense. They could endure more, carry more, and survive in ways we can hardly imagine. But in another sense, we are strong in different ways. Our survival no longer depends on hunting or fighting. It depends on knowledge, cooperation, and adaptation. Both forms of strength are valuable, and both tell the story of humanity's journey. When we picture a caveman today, we shouldn't see a clumsy brute with a club. We should see a human being shaped by hardship, hardened by nature and strengthened by necessity. A person who carried the same spirit we carry inside us, but who lived in a world that demanded a different kind of strength. And maybe, if we take even a small piece of their resilience into our own lives, we can find new ways to grow stronger ourselves. Now, before we wrap up, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think cavemen were truly stronger than us, or do we just underestimate the power of modern humans? Share your opinion in the comments. I'd really enjoy reading what you think. And if you enjoyed this journey into the past, it would mean a lot if you could like this video, share it with someone who'd find it interesting, and subscribe for more stories like this. Every bit of support helps me keep bringing you these fascinating explorations. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the world of cavemen. Their story isn't just history, it's a reminder of where we came from, what we endured, and how far we've come. And maybe deep down it's also a reminder that the strength of the human spirit has never left us. It's still here, waiting to be awakened whenever life demands it.